I'm Jason Erickson. I was the lead pastor at Northwoods Life Church from 2017 to 2021. My wife Kara and I pastored there for almost 5 years with our three sons, Lincoln, Solomon, and Everin. And currently I am the pastor of Risen Church in Brainerd, Minnesota. I think what I loved about living in Perham, or our family loved about, is I think it's maybe on Wednesdays or Thursdays when you can smell the licorice in the air so powerfully. But there's another day of the week that the dog food or the something totally reeked. I first learned of Perham basically through going to Dickinson, North Dakota to meet my uncle who lived in Montana. We'd go there, and I remember seeing the big Tuffy's building as we drove through town. And so that's how I officially heard of Perham. And when we first heard about it, there was a part of me at that point feeling called to maybe go to Montana. And so I initially turned down the opportunity to be thrown in the pool, for lack of a better term. And I remember then Pastor Clarence St. John just calling me a couple weeks later and just saying, hey, we're praying for you. We know you're in a season of transition. And I remember him kind of talking about Perham, and I don't think he at that point knew that I had kind of said no, because I wanted to be genuine, and if I was being called there, to have it be the Lord's leading and not just as a job interview. And so I remember hanging up that phone and being concerned. I'm like, I'm wondering if I made a mistake or something like that. And then it's neat how God works, because ultimately my dad passed away from an accident. And so Kevin Gunyon, Pastor Kevin, who was the interim pastor there at the time, called me back. And I thought he was just going to call and basically give me his condolences for the passing of my dad. And he just said to me, he goes, Jason, we've been praying about this. He goes, and just want to verify, does no mean no when it comes to Perham? And that was kind of like God just tapping on my heart a little bit. And so I remember just telling him, can we just pray about over the weekend? So we actually drove to Perham that weekend and went and sat at the merry-go-round at the elementary school. And I remember God just totally transforming our family's heart within the matter of 3 hours. We went from like, I don't really know if we want to be here, to literally feeling called. And so we called Pastor Gunyon back and just said, put our name in the running, and however the Lord allows it to work out, let it go from there. In thinking about some of the lives that were changed, and I just want to give the glory to the Lord through this, and a lot of people's investment into people's lives. But one was a man who had ultimately been living in a rental unit and had been an alcoholic and on drugs. His dad brought him into my office and said, can you please help my son? And I remember working and praying and just trying to be there to hear this dad's concern for his son, and the son sitting there across from me, clearly impacted by drugs. And within a week we were able, but through God's grace, to get him into Teen Challenge. He went into the year-long program. Ultimately, he's now working in Teen Challenge here at Brainerd. And so it's just neat how God completely transformed this man's life. Another one was a guy a young man who periodically would come to church and had been dating a gal who attended semi-regularly. He had been dealing with alcoholism also. And what was so cool is I remember, I don't want to take his story, but what was really neat is one day he called one of our board members and said, I've had enough. Came and we met, he and the board member and myself came, and we prayed at the church. He accepted Christ right at the front of the altar there. And about 3 days later, the board member gave him a call and texted me, and he said, look at the time the email was sent. And it was sent at 3:16 in the afternoon. And so now he has a tattoo with a clock on his hand saying 3:16, along with John 3:16 as a tattoo on his arm. So just a cool story. Transformed it. He and his girlfriend got married. They now have children together. Just a beautiful story of God's redemption. You know, I just think God taught me. We were there during the COVID experience, for lack of a better term. And I think God just taught me that He's bigger than any of these events in the world, you know what I mean? And what we saw His sovereignty, we saw His goodness, we saw His faithfulness. I'll never forget the very first message we preached was, I think it was Mother's Day, and I was standing above where my office was in the back on that roof and preaching from there because of the distancing and stuff like that. And it was at the time, I was like, what are we doing here? But now looking back, it was also a special time, and I think you navigate through the people's different perspectives on masks, no masks, seating, distancing, all those fun things. But yet, through it all, God brought us together as a church. God was faithful through it all. And so I guess I just saw the bigness of God through that time. What I'm excited about is that it's a group of people coming together under the goodness of God's grace and mercy. People have been changed by Christ. And I believe that it's a common, centrally directed goal of reaching the hearts and the souls of the people of Perham, Minnesota with the good news of Jesus Christ.